All right, let's go over to New Jersey now, where new state budgets due on the governor's desk in less than 2 weeks, and they're not a few dollars apart. The state is attempting to close a nearly $2 billion budget cap that's got the Democratic legislature and the governor very far apart. Now, Monday, I caught up with several New Jersey lawmakers that have a major role in this, leadership positions here in both chambers of the Assembly, and they weighed in on the budget crisis, the state's pension system, and the idea that you got to raise taxes on the wealthiest residents. Take a listen. The clock's ticking. You guys got a couple weeks here to make sense out of what is a difficult situation in terms of making the math add up. From the initial meetings today, you any more comfortable that you're on the same page with the other side of the aisle here, or is one saying we're going to cut the pensions, the other one saying you got to raise the revenues? Where are you guys?
We are just literally 2 to 3 weeks away from having a constitutionally balanced budget. And unlike previous years, where we're just dealing with the proposed fiscal year budget, we find ourselves dealing with two crises here. We have to fund the current fiscal year budget and make sure that's constitutionally balanced, and then deal with the proposed fiscal year budget and have a constitutionally balanced budget going forward. And it all revolves around this pension payment and how much is going to be made and when it will actually be made, whether it's going to be a portion this current fiscal year or a portion next fiscal year. We always have to remember that these pension payments were required under the bipartisan pension and health benefit reforms. And for the viewers out there, simply the public workers, those who serve the public, whether it's police, fire, teachers, those who work in our State House buildings, those who plow snow, they were going to be asked to pay more money for their pension systems out of their salaries, less money in their pocket, but more towards it. And the state would then come up with 7 payments to get the pension fund back in a solvent manner. We are now literally only in the 3rd payment. This is the 3rd payment that needs to be made. And unfortunately, the governors of this state had no planning in place to fully fund this over 7 years. Right now, as the budget chair, my main focus is to come up with a solution in the next 3 weeks to balance the current fiscal year budget and the proposed fiscal year budget. And I think it's going to be a combination of some type of payment that will be made. I'm hoping it's greater than the $1.6 billion. I would love to see the $2.2 billion made in the next fiscal year budget. I just don't know if it's realistic or not.
It's going to be a fun June in Trenton, won't it?
Not really. We have a huge budget deficit that we have to solve. We have an obligation to ensure that public workers' pensions are secure. Whether you're a private worker or a public worker, anyone upon their retirement should be able to rely on their pension. So we have to make sure that happens, but there's not enough money to do that.
To that end, there seems to be an inevitable collision. The governor's already said, as well as other folks, revenues haven't met projections right now. Jersey's really short, and we're going to have to put in, for them, a fraction of what basically is due on the pensions. Democrats have said everything from no way, no how. There even could be a shutdown was thrown out there. You and others have advocated at least to be bringing in some revenue for the top income earners here, and that doesn't seem to be something that the governor's going to put his signature on. Help us out here. You've been through this rodeo a few times. Does this take give on both sides?
Yes, and I've proposed that. Okay, the millionaire's tax, which would hit high income earners, not just making $1 million a year, $500,000 a year, $400,000 a year, a boost in their income tax, but at the same time repealing the estate tax. I've been told, studies have indicated that it's the estate tax that drive wealthy people out of New Jersey, and that many of them. The income tax would not be that big a deal, especially if it helps solve this problem. And at the same time, it eliminates the estate tax, which in New Jersey is at a very low level and hits a lot of families during bad times, obviously, someone's death. That's a compromise.
If, as expected, the dominoes fall where the governor wants to only institute partial funding for the pension plan, I've heard everything from that you could see Sweeney calling for a government shutdown. I've heard others, colleagues, saying that they want to apply here for the top 1% or income earners over 350 having an additional tax. Walk us through it and the audience through what is the likelihood of which scenario is playing out right now, because we've already talked to a lot of your colleagues who've laid out the significance of what we're doing. This isn't just moving around the deck chairs here. You're talking about a lot of money, a significant portion here impacting pensions for folks in the state. How do you envision this playing out between now and the end of June?
Well, I think what's important for your viewers to understand is 1 out of every 8 people in the state of New Jersey benefits from that pension. And if that pension were to somehow not be sustainable, not be stable, it would have horrific economic impacts on the state of New Jersey. So that's why this is such an important issue. It has a long-term consequence to all of us. There is no reason, and I mean zero reason, why we should ever end up in a government shutdown. The reality is New Jersey's storied comeback that the governor likes to talk about is not materialized. We're in economic free fall. We're trailing all of our neighboring states from an unemployment rate. We have not participated in the national recovery under this president the way the rest of the country has, and we continue to struggle. And that's not partisan politics, that's just reality. And it's reflected in the fact that we have not once met the governor's revenue projections, and our unemployment rate continues to trail those of our neighboring states. So we have to face some harsh realities here, and we need to make sure that we live up to our obligations. If we don't make the pension payment, the state's going to look at another downgrade from the financial institutions on our ability to borrow money and the ability to pay back the money we've already borrowed under this governor and previous governors. So this isn't just about fancy words and 30-second sound bites. People have got to get very serious very quick. And one of the challenges that Wall Street has said about our budget is that we don't have revenues that match the projections, and we don't have enough revenues coming in to pay our bills, like the pension, like Transportation Trust Fund. So one of the things that the rating agencies are actually looking at is, do we have the political courage to ask for more revenues? And one of the easy ones, which is why you keep hearing it, is should we ask the wealthiest 0.1%, which are 16,000 people out of 8.8 million that make over $1 million a year or more, to pay more? The problem is this is an idea that we've talked about for 4 or 5 years. It's probably 4 or 5 years too late. And raising that revenue would generate $700 million, and that's probably about $1.5 billion short of what we need.
There's 2 different schools of thought. From some of the governor's folks, they say, hey, Sandy was an unexpected phenomenon, and it obviously put us in a bind. Secondarily, they're saying that there's been a lot of volatility in tax revenues that they thought were going to come that didn't. But I do come back to that this isn't the first rodeo. This is a recurring theme here, that the projections don't meet the reality. Why are you short nearly $1 billion from what you were projected to have in terms of state revenues?
I think it's important, Rich, to look back at the past 5 years since Governor Christie assumed the office and recognize that each and every year we've been borrowing an additional $1 billion to keep the budget afloat. The bottom line is, year after year, we've had overly aggressive numbers being given to us. We've gone back to the governor's office and said these are aggressive numbers. And they've said they might be aggressive, but we're in charge of determining what the projected revenues will be, and this is what we say. So we've been in a quandary in that sense. But this is a year that's different from any other year, and yet it's also the same. When the governor came into office, he spoke about funding, for example, transportation needs out of the budget. Yet we've not contributed any dollars from the budget into the Transportation Trust Fund, which goes to repair our bridges and our roads and everything else, and is a vital piece of New Jersey. In this year's budget, we have basically no increase to higher education. We're $1 billion short on what we're giving for K through 12 education. We're not meeting our current needs, and there is no plan. And the main concern that I have, and I must confess to you, the main concern that I have is that there is no plan. There is no plan for what's going to happen tomorrow and next year and the year after that. All that we've been able to do for the past 5 years is get to the end of the day.
Here's my prediction. There will not be a government shutdown in New Jersey. There'll be some, Houdini math that's going to go on yet again here, and they'll do some stopgap measure. But at the end of the day, they will not fully fund the pension. They're going to borrow against it yet again here, and there probably will be some painful cuts. In politics, of course, national political aspirations of the governor, gubernatorial aspirations for Mr. Sweeney in the state Senate are definitely a part of this equation here. As they say, stay tuned. They've got less than 2 weeks to figure this thing out. Okay, coming up next, everybody, we'll switch gears to a day I guarantee you at home, when you see this picture, you remember where you were when these live pictures played out. It's 20 years to the day since this Bronco chase on the California freeway. Former NFL star O.J. Simpson evading authorities, albeit not too fast, leading them down that L.A. freeway. When I come back here, we'll talk with a panel, not just where they were, but some of the consequences that it's had, not just on pop culture, and what kind of a reaction will the public have if this scene played out today. Stay with us.